We're here to do what's supposed to be done. And like I said, if we take their money and we don't provide them with the service that they're paying for, then we're no better than thieves.
Sheriff of Goliad County, Roy Boyd, is a seventh-generation Texan who is joining me today on the Dr. Phil podcast. He has served in local law enforcement for over 3 decades, and he has really been a leader in this position. He is helping to lead the way in collaboration of agencies, border security initiatives, innovative enforcement concepts, legislative affairs, and other areas of benefit to the citizens of Goliad and the great state of Texas. Now, Boyd developed and implemented the Operation Lone Star Task Force to combat open borders with the help of other dedicated sheriffs and chiefs of police throughout South and Central Texas. And anybody that's been paying attention for the last several years knows that this is a challenge in Texas because we have so much border with Mexico down here. And today, Sheriff Boyd is sharing the challenges of tackling both human and drug trafficking and the need for increased resources. So I don't know how you even have the time to sit still for a minute to talk to us, but thank you for joining me and talking about this today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It's an honor to be here.
Let's talk about this. Goliad is obviously very south in Texas, and you've been dealing with this for some time. It's really gotten into the media of late, but this isn't a problem that you've faced just of late. This is something you've been dealing with for a long, long time before it got national attention. Is that a fair statement?
We've been dealing with this so long that I remember when Border Patrol would give us a box of bullets for every illegal alien we apprehended and turned over to them. So that's how long ago we've been dealing with this.
Wow. Now, you're married and you have 4 children and you live down there on the border. You're a seventh-generation Texan, so you know a lot about being in that area and living with this border. We're going to talk about the law enforcement aspects of this, but what does this bring to mind to you as a father of 4 kids that you've had to raise up in this area? Is this a thing that comes to mind to parents down there, that the threat of these people coming across the border, not knowing who they are, and I guess as importantly, knowing who some of them are?
Yeah, and I'll put it to you this way. When this is how it hits home for us. We do a lot of enforcement action. We're very proactive. We took down a cartel scout. And a scout is somebody who drives ahead of or behind load vehicles in order to find out if there's law enforcement there, or they are there in case there's a bailout to pick up the product or the people whenever they have to abandon them for some reason. And some of these vehicles, believe it or not, have in-car cameras in them. And when you arrest a scout and you go back and you look at the in-car camera and you watch the car passing by your driveway where your kids get on the school bus every morning, that makes it sink home. I'll never forget taking a video home to my wife, a short snippet, and I showed it to her. And I said, I want you to see this. And she looked at it and she said, yeah, so what? That's our mailbox. I said, yeah, this is from the cartel scout. I said, we need to sit down with the kids this evening and make sure that when they do go out to the bus stop, they have to have very specific instructions on where to stand and what to do if somebody stops the car. I said, because we're knocking down lots of loads, and at some point, somebody's not going to be happy with us. And I don't want my kids standing out there on a smuggling route, which unfortunately we live on, and have something happen to them.
So you're talking about in-car camera by the cartel scout was going right by your house?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Wow. Now, were they scouting your house, or is it just that you're on one of their regular smuggling routes?
It's that we're on one of the regular smuggling routes. But due to the fact that the cartel has a presence in every community, there's no way in the world that they don't know exactly where I live. I'm in a county where if 2 people know, the whole county knows.
Yeah.
And I'm in the phone book. I'm public. We're a small community, so I'm sure they know where I live.
Give me an idea of how many loads come through your community down there at its peak. when that border is open and flowing, how many loads of drugs or human trafficking do you think goes through Goliad, for example? How heavy is the traffic there?
We took down one organization after a 2-year investigation that started in 2021. When we took that organization down, working with the Department of Homeland Security, DHS advised us that their best estimate that organization was bringing no less than 100,000 illegal aliens a year just through Goliad County. We're a county of 7,012 people. So you can kind of put that in perspective. And that's one contractor out of numerous contractors working for the various cartels south of us.
100,000. All right, let's talk about that. Let's monetize that in some way. What kind of money are we talking about them generating, bringing that kind of traffic through this small county in South Texas?
Well, it just varies depending on who it is they're smuggling and what the size of the load is. But we briefed somebody earlier this week who was getting paid $15,000 for every load they brought through. And so on another organization that we've been investigating. And so you figure a load in a large vehicle is going to be 20 to 40 people, but most of the time it's going to be smaller. But you take and go 100,000 at 100,000 a year, and then you backtrack that to maybe on an average of 15 per load, comes out to a lot of money.
Boy, it does. So we're talking big business. With President Trump and Tom Homan closing this border down, what do you expect the cartel's reactions to be to that? I heard just yesterday or the day before that some border guards got fired on by cartel members. They assume cartel members opened fire on some border guards. What do you think their reaction is going to be if their business gets really pinched and shut down like this?
Well, they're going to adapt is what they're going to do. Whenever the cartel does something brazen like that, they're probably trying to type your resources in one location so that they thin them out in another so that they can go around and conduct their business in another location where you've now moved all your resources out of. And so you have to look at this entire thing basically in terms of war. And that's basically what this is it's a war between the cartels and many of the criminals in Mexico and the United States. And so I believe they're going to adapt. They're still bringing loads up to this day in 18-wheelers. I'm talking 20 to 40 at a time. We know because we see it through our investigations. But what we've seen is we've seen a lot more of the one smuggler on 2 to 4 illegal aliens that are being brought up. And so what they're doing is they're adapting. It's constant adaptation by the cartels. They're very fluid. I compare them to water. They go where the least resistance is, and they're always going to be pushing to make money. And what they're going to do is if they can get fewer people in the country, it just means their price per head is going to go up. Now, I have full faith that the Trump administration and people like Tom Homan and Mike Banks and Rodney Scott and Ron Vitello are going to be able to drastically impact the quality of life of the people along the border. But the real problem, Doc, is not just the border. The border is the easy part. It's the interior where the cartel has cemented their presence during the last 4 years and have basically replicated the Mexican government's plaza system throughout the U.S. under cartel control.
Life gets hectic, so we forget to stop and connect. Cozy Earth creates a space that elevates love's little moments. Cozy Earth's bamboo sheets, soft, smooth, breathable. Every night's a Cloud9 getaway. Shopping for her? Cozy Earth's bamboo pajama set is the ultimate gift. Silky, breathable, perfect for lazy mornings or unwinding after a long day. Robin will love this. Plus, Cozy Earth's men's collection has everything he'll love. Pajamas, joggers, and more. Comfortable, versatile, and built to last. The perfect gift for your guy. Now this Valentine's Day, show your love with Cozy Earth. With a 100-night sleep trial, a 10-year warranty, this is a gift that speaks to comfort and connection. Get up to 40% off at CozyEarth.com with my code PHIL. That's CozyEarth.com code PHIL. And don't forget, if asked in the post-purchase survey, let them know you heard about Cozy Earth from the Dr. Phil podcast. They deserve this. Elevate your love with Cozy Earth. You said something really interesting. I was reading all the notes and all the wisdom that you've shared with us, and I really thank you for taking the time to educate us about this. We talk about it being an open border, My takeaway from what you said is it really isn't an open border. You say the border is controlled, but it's controlled by the cartel on the other side. That it may seem open, but the turnstile, the gatekeepers are really the cartels on the other side, that they're the ones controlling the border. Talk about that some.
You're absolutely right. The cartel is the one who controls what comes across the border. Anything that comes across illicitly and some of the stuff that comes across legally is controlled by the cartel. And the cartel gets their cut of everything that is coming across. We've actually come across people that have been tortured as a result of attempting to cross the border without permission of the cartel or without paying them, because the cartel is pretty ruthless, but they're out to make money. We've seen in the past where they've killed numerous people for trying to cross the border without paying the cartels. And so they have basically what equates to an army on the other side of the Rio Grande. And they have many people on this side of the Rio Grande that helped them to enforce the rules that the cartel has put in place, because the Mexican government is by no means in control of most of Mexico. The cartels actually run it, because the cartels are the ones not only enforcing the laws that they put in place, they're the ones that are providing electricity and drinking water and streetlights and paving the roads. So that's not the Mexican government doing that. And through that process, they have gained absolute control of most of the border regions that, that Mexico has facing the United States. And so they control that because they're extremely greedy and they want all of the money they can get. According to last time I sat down and my wife and I had dinner with Senator Cruz, they had estimated, I believe it was 2022 or 23, the cartels made about $13 billion just off of slave trade. That's the people they're bringing in this country. That didn't include their drugs and the other things that they're involved in. So it's a lot of money, and they're pretty ruthless at it.
It's mind-boggling to think about. I met with Senator Cruz in his office in Washington, D.C. just a few days ago, and he was talking about the fact that the cartels seem to substantially outgun the Mexican military, that they're the ones with the firepower, they're the ones with the manpower, and you're telling me you agree that they're actually running the country, and certainly in the border zones, they're the ones in control. Is there corruption, or are they just outgunning and outmanning the military?
It's a combination. The Mexican government and the cartels work hand in hand. They're basically intertwined. You have cartel people that are in the government. You have government people who are on the take down there that are working with them. But the first thing, if you want to understand how it functions in Mexico, you have to go back and look. The Mexican government has what they call a plaza system. And what that system is the Mexican government will carve out a piece of, geographic territory, and they will lease it to organized crime for a flat rate every month. And for that flat rate, you may be able to, move X number of pounds of marijuana, X number of kilos of cocaine, methamphetamine, fentanyl, and a certain number of people to be smuggled in the United States. Anything above and beyond that, you have to pay a tax to the Mexican government on. And by Mexican government, I don't mean the government serving the people. I mean to the people in the government. And the Mexican government has done this for a long time. You go all the way back to Pablo Acosta out in Oinagua back in the 70s and 80s. He was paying the Mexican government $100,000 a month back then in order to lease that plaza of Oinagua from the government. And of course, the Mexican government eventually came in and killed him because he did not want to deal with the Colombians, and somebody else offered them $1 million a month for the same plaza. So the government knocked off Pablo Acosta in order to get more money out of the plaza. And so when you realize that this is how government functions in Mexico, it tells you everything you need to know about what we're dealing with on the other side of the border.
Okay, now wait a minute. Let me be sure that I've got this right. You're saying that obviously this isn't a policy that you can go look up in the government. This is off the books, but there are individuals, like I guess maybe we would call them the Minister of the Interior or whatever, but there are people in the government that have a side hustle. They've got their real government job, things that they do above board, but then there are people in the government that have this plaza system, they are leasing out areas of Mexican territory where these cartels pay a fee and they can operate with impunity within that area to move a certain volume of people or drugs, and they get no hassle from the government. They're leasing that area, and it keeps all the other cartels away, and it keeps the government away.
Yeah, they're paying the convenience fee to be able to conduct their illicit operations within that geographic territory to those members of the government. That's exactly what it is.
Okay, and are they all around the border?
No, they stretch out throughout the country of Mexico. And the price is going to depend on, number one, how big is your organization? How big is the geography you want? And how valuable is the territory for either cultivating, safeguarding, or getting your product into the United States of America? Probably not going to pay as much for Onagua as you are for Juarez, because you've got much more logistical challenge from Onagua to get your property or your product in the United States than if you're in Juarez or just south of Nogales or something like that.
Okay, so that's prime real estate right along the border there. So
Well, yeah,
they don't,
you pay more money for better real estate, obviously.
yeah, and so they don't worry about the Mexican military or police force coming in there and bother them. They don't have to hide. They can just have things out in the open there.
Well, they can until somebody else comes along and offers the Mexican government or officials more money for that same territory, or moves in and has the power and the desire to take it over. Then they have to start worrying, because it's all about, like I said, it's all about money. When you go back to Pablo Acosta, the investigative reporters who looked into Pablo Acosta say that he would take $100,000 a month to the federal radio station in Onagua, and a cut went all the way up to the president of Mexico at that point in time. So you've got a lot of mouths to feed. You've got a lot of variables going on. And so there is no real stability for the most part, because they're constantly competing with each other. They're constantly trying to outbid each other, or they're trying to kill each other in order to get the upper hand.
So how much money are we talking about here? I've been to Eagle Pass. I've been to a lot of areas around the border there. Some of these areas go for miles. I mean, 20, 30, 40, 50 miles along there. Will one cartel control all of that? A long stretch of the river? Will somebody have 20, 30, 40 miles of it, or is it chopped up?
It's chopped up, and it varies depending on where you're at and who has access to certain areas, who's either paid for it or has enough muscle in order to come in and be able to obtain it. So it varies. The size of that contact with the border varies based off of the organization and how the government has it laid out, and how much your neighbors are willing to try to fight and take it from you.
Yeah, and you say somebody was paying $100,000 a month, then Colombians come in and say, we'll give you $1 million. So they need to get rid of the guy they made a deal with for 100, so they just go take him out.
It's all about money.
Wow. So are these government officials that are on the take like this? I know there's a lot of people that have got their hands in the till, but they must be making a lot of money. Are they living extravagant lifestyles down there?
That is a good question. I don't know. I don't know how they're living, but I don't care how much money they're making. Is it worth selling your soul to the devil, so to speak? I would think that for all of the luxury they could buy, they probably still can't buy a good night's sleep because of the people they're dealing with. You never know who's going to turn on who.
I would think that it's such a dog-eat-dog system that you're describing. You just wonder, is it going to be tomorrow or the next day? It seemed like it's when, not if, somebody's going to step on you to get to the next level. I don't know how in the world they ever survive in that situation.
That's the nature of the business, I guess. If you want to get in bed with them, you're going to have to deal with those consequences. But the problem is, human nature. Most people have a short memory and are greedy. And once they're willing to take a little bit, then they're owned. Because once the cartel has you in their pocket, there's no getting out without their permission. And so it's just the nature of the business down there.
How much of this is bleeding across the border in terms of corruption on the American side?
I guarantee you it's happening. We have discussions with some of our friends along the border, and it's a problem that law enforcement along the border faces on a regular basis. But down there, it's when you get on the Texas side, you have a couple different things, and I will tell you that when we first started working closely with folks on the border, we were really distrustful of some of the law enforcement. Uh, you have to know who to trust and who you can't. But I will tell you that one of the things that really opened my eyes was we were having a meeting in Kingsville, and one of the officers from the Rio Grande Valley came up and said, "Hey, listen, I know you don't trust us. I understand." They said, "But let me explain to you how it works where we're at." The guy tells me, "I work for a small police department." He said, "I have a cartel person assigned to follow me every day when I'm working, so they know what I'm doing. I have one that's assigned to follow me every day when I'm off, so they know where I go. They know where my family is. They know where my kids go to school." And he said, "While you may think that we're all corrupt," he said, "look at it this way. Imagine yourself walking out of your house, getting ready to go to work, and your patrol car is in the driveway. And when you go to get in your patrol car, there's a Nilla envelope underneath the windshield wiper." He said, "In that Nilla envelope may be a picture of your daughter at the playground at the elementary school. And all it says is, 'Don't work Highway 281 between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. today.'" And he said, "That's it." He says, "Do you think I'm going to go work Highway 281 between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. today?" I said, "No, I wouldn't think so." He says, "No." And he goes, "The problem is, who do I tell?" He says, "Because a lot of times the cartel has people embedded within our law enforcement agencies down here. And so I can't go tell my supervisors because if it gets out, then my family's in danger." And he says, so that's kind of the life that those poor people are living down in the valley and along in the border towns, is the vast intimidation. Now, are there cases of bribery? We've seen it. We have counties down there where the sheriffs have gone to federal prison, their family members have gone to federal prison. They've been working with the cartels. They have helped the cartels. We've seen it much farther north than the border, where law enforcement has helped them because they do offer money sometimes. But it's one of those things that when you get down the border has become more like Mexico in many ways than it has the United States. And I feel sorry for those folks because there's a lot of good people down there who are living in fear and are trying to do the best. And to me, those guys are heroes because they're right there on the front line. It would be easy to criticize them, when you're a long ways off. But when you look at these folks and their families are being threatened, and all they're being told is not to be at a particular place at a particular time, really can't blame them for not being there. I mean, if it was your family, would you go out and work the highway after they gave you a picture of your kid on the playground at school?
I think I'd be looking for someplace I could farm in Nebraska or something. It just seems like that's a very dangerous place to be. $36 trillion. That is the U.S. debt, and it gets deeper and deeper by the day. Our debt has never been higher, nor have the stakes. The government is looking to slash the federal budget by $2 trillion, and no one knows what that will mean for your job, savings, and future. I've seen a lot in my time, and there's one thing I know for sure. You need to prepare before it's too late. I trust Preserve Gold to help protect my wealth, and I strongly urge you to do the same. They are the only precious metals firm I trust and recommend to my family, friends, and audience, and they have a special offer just for you. Text Dr. Phil to 50505 to get your free precious metals guide from Preserve Gold. With gold prices recently breaking records and analysts predicting this trend to continue throughout 2025, you cannot afford to wait. As a bonus, you can get up to $15,000 with a qualified purchase from Preserve Gold. So don't wait. Text Dr. Phil to 50505 today. Talk to me about these stash sites that you're talking about, because you said when you first came in as sheriff in 2021, you realized real quickly that the cartels had, I think you said 16 different stash sites that you discovered just straight away. What are stash sites? And what do they consist of, and what are they stashing? I assume it's drugs, of course, but talk about what you found.
So Goliad is halfway between Laredo and Houston. So we're about 180 miles out of Laredo, 180 miles from Houston. But most of our traffic actually comes out of the Rio Grande Valley, McAllen, Brownsville, down in that area. And so what was happening was you have cartels. Cartels have liaisons. The liaisons work with contractors that work for the cartels, and then the contractors have subcontractors. So what was happening was these contractors would have either the contractors themselves or subcontractors would drive loads of illegal aliens up to Goliad or one of the counties in this area. And a stash site is a place where they might put those illegal aliens there for a little while they go fuel up or while they go and get supplies. It also is a place where they would stash stolen vehicles to make sure the GPS was properly disconnected, and would and these places were not on property that was owned by anybody related to any of the contractors or anything. Usually, these properties were out in the middle of nowhere. They were absentee landowners. They had scouts find them for them, and they would stash these people. So in our area, especially in 2021, they were bringing up these illegals. They would put them on the stash site. The driver would leave. The illegals would stay on this property that didn't belong to anybody associated with the activity. And then somebody from the Houston area would come down to that location, pick them up, and then take them on the journey to Houston. And so that's really what most of our stash sites were. It was stashing out illegal aliens, resupply for water, food, anything like that, fixing flats, making repairs to cars, or storing stolen vehicles in order to ensure that the GPS had been properly disconnected on them.
So these weren't buildings or anything. They were just off the road out in the middle of nowhere where people could congregate so they weren't seen from the streets. They weren't seen from the road.
Most of them, that is correct. Some of them did have houses that hadn't been lived in a long time. And the cartel contractors do utilize houses in smaller communities as stash sites, and we're aware of that. But most of ours were out on absentee landowners that were nowhere from this area. And the cartel scouts had located those places and had set them up shop so that they could utilize them rent free, of course.
Yeah. And you said some of these people were afraid to come down and get on their own land because these people were there. You don't want to happen onto them.
We had a lot of residents who were scared because of the activity in the brush out in the county when we first got here in 2021. And so we worked very hard to remedy that. Now we found 16 cartel stash sites. There's not much telling how many stash sites there were actually out in the county, but those are just the ones we were able to discover through our proactive work. So, and then when you go a little farther south of us, you'll find ranches that are completely abandoned because it's no longer safe, or it hasn't been safe for quite a while for people to leave their house unattended or leave their family at home while they go to work. And so a lot of those larger ranches, the people that own them have bought houses in the towns so that their wife and children will be safe while they go to work during the day.
Wow. Now, LaFern had a magazine article up just a second ago. Can we see that again? A loco gringo takes on the Mexican cartel. Sheriff Roy Boyd had an idea. Instead of letting human smugglers pass from one county to the next, sheriff departments could collaborate to rid Texas of the cartels, and it's working. How are you surviving standing up against these guys?
Always remember that the cartel is they run a business. They're like, I think of them as a major corporation. They're in it to make money. And when you're this far north, coming out and trying to do harm to law enforcement, do harm to civilians is counterproductive to making money and conducting your business successfully. Now, when you're down in the valley, it's easier to get away with intimidation and bribery and all the threats that come along with the cartel. But when you're this far north, the last thing the cartel wants to do is to wind up bringing the federal government to bear against them. And they've learned through the years that if they do certain things, then next thing you know, you have Department of Homeland Security and a whole bunch of other feds showing up, and they can no longer go through and conduct their business in a profitable manner. And so to me, I can't let criminals and thugs intimidate the people of my county. My job as a sheriff is I am the conservator of the peace. My primary job is to uphold the Constitution of the United States, uphold the Constitution of the state of Texas, enforce the laws, and be the person who's willing to stand between those people that are willing to do evil and commit crimes and the innocent people who are here going to work every day, supporting their families. And so, we can't just roll over and let them have their way. So that's where all this came in was we kind of decided, let's try something different. Let's do something that is aimed at denying the cartels the ability to generate enough profit to conduct business in the state of Texas. And that's the direction we've been headed.
Yeah. Now, this is a pickup that you chased. The article says you were driving down the road and you passed this pickup and turned around and gave chase because you could tell it was a load car. That's your son, I believe, helping you out there. He's holding an AR-15 to kind of suppress any activity on their part. So you gave chase and they veered off the road and kind of crashed into a fence in the bushes there, right?
Yeah, we had left church and we had a gentleman in our community that just got out of prison and had started a craft shop for leather. And so gave him a little bit of business, trying to, help him. He wants to have a legitimate business. So the guys at sheriff's office, we were doing a little business with him. And after church, at the time he was 12, my son said he wanted to go with me to go pick up a holster I had this gentleman make. And so we were on our way down the road to go do that. And I look over as I pass the truck, and it's got a sheet of plywood in the bed with fingers all the way around the edge. And we call that a clue in law enforcement.
Yeah, there's a giveaway.
So, yeah. So I called on the radio. The deputies that were working were on a call on the other side of the county. I called the next county we were headed towards. All their deputies were tied up. So I told my son, I said, well, we're going to have to pull them over and they're going to run. So get ready. And so I went to pull them over. They ran. I was able to get all the ones that were in the bed because there were a lot more people in the cab of the truck as well. But I hopped up on the bumper, instructed those folks not to move, made sure they understood that we were serious about it. And so then I had my son hold AR while I started zip tying the people in the bed of the truck. And then when the deputies showed up, I finally backed up and took a picture. And at the time, I sent that picture to the governor's office to tell him this is how bad it is. We need help. And within a very short period of time, the governor reached out and is like, what can I do to help you? And so we appreciate that greatly. And that was what kind of spawned this Operation Lone Star task force that we ended up putting together.
Right. And talk about Operation Lone Star. You contacted Governor Abbott about combating this illegal immigration and criminal activities at the southern border. And that was kind of the genesis of this Operation Lone Star. Just describe what that's all about.
So you have a couple different things, Dr. Phil. You have Operation Lone Star, which is actually a state initiative, and it was funded by the governor and the legislature, and it is primarily your state agencies like DPS, Parks and Wildlife, Texas Military Forces, and they were conducting operations on the border itself. So what happened was, the governor invited myself and some of the border sheriffs to a meeting at the Capitol one day, went up there, and I was invited because I'm kind of a pain, and I just kept showing them that, we had things that we needed to get done,
right?
And we were being overrun. And so go up there, meet with the governor, have a discussion about what we need. And then at that point, the governor asked how we were going to fund it. So gave him some recommendations, wrote up a document, sent it up to the governor's office. He accepted it. I started the Operation Lone Star grant, and that grant provides money from the state of Texas to local law enforcement agencies to combat smuggling operations within their jurisdiction. So once the governor gave us that grant, I just thought, we can't pretend like we live on an island. We have to come together. Law enforcement has to change its mindset and it has to change its methodology in order to combat such a vast criminal enterprise that we're dealing with. And so I called some sheriffs together, started off with 8 of us, said, hey, let's get together. Let's form a task force. We'll come up with a memorandum of understanding, allowing us to operate in each other's counties. We'll all go and we'll help each other wherever we see there's a major problem, and we'll go squash it real fast, and we'll work a bunch of highway interdiction and try to take as many bad guys off the street as we can. And so started off, at first there were a lot of people that were skeptical about the concept. We put it together. It worked very well. We've grown now to 52 law enforcement agencies across the state of Texas. We go all the way from the border down in Kinney County with Sheriff Coe, all the way up to Hill County, just south of Dallas-Fort Worth. And we go as far west as Kerr County at this point in time and stretch all the way back to the Gulf Coast. So we have a lot of agencies in there, but we partner with the Department of Homeland Security in those offices that were willing to work with us. We also partner very closely with Border Patrol. We partner with Texas DPS and Parks and Wildlife and anybody else who's ready to get in and help us not only interdict, but investigate the organizations in an effort to dismantle them across the state of Texas. And so we're continuing to grow. And as we grow, we kind of adapt our model in order to fit this larger footprint. And we've been breaking it out into geographic areas based off of corridors that the cartels use to get their products to market.
Well, I'm looking at crime in Goliad County, for example, and you entered office in 21. In 24, burglaries have dropped like 80%. Criminal mischief has dropped like 90%. I mean, just obviously, you look at these things, it's working. You have a presence there. You still got some trespass going on, but auto theft has dropped dramatically. You're getting crime under control down there.
You know, it's funny. If you'll just go out and enforce the law, you actually wind up suppressing crime. And we call it crime abatement through traffic enforcement. If you go out and make traffic stops on the roadways, you'll come across all kinds of criminals involved in all kinds of crime. And believe it or not, when they're in jail, they can't victimize the citizens of the community. And so that's the philosophy we've taken. You know, when you look at the 5 years prior to us coming into office, they averaged about 77 arrests. In 2024, we made 502 arrests. And I continue to be amazed at the numbers, because our first year in office, we had 252 arrests, and that was an all-time record for the county of Goliad for 1 year's worth of arrests. And I never thought we would top it, but it continues to climb every single year. So I know the previous year we had 482, but I was shocked when it went up to 502 for 2024. So we're going to keep doing our job. The citizens of this community, they don't pay us to sit around and put our feet on the desk. There is no Mayberry anymore. And so if we're going to take your hard-earned tax dollars and we are going to have our equipment and be employed at off the backs of the people that work every day, then by God, we're going to get out there and earn it. And it's not just the citizens of Goliad. The state of Texas gives us money that comes in from across the state to help fund our Operation Lone Star Task Force efforts. So, we see that we are obligated to our community and to the entire state. And if the government's going to take your money and give it to us, we're going to make sure it's used wisely. And so there won't be any putting your feet on the desk around here, because we're going to make sure that we reduce the likelihood of victimization of the people within our community and throughout our region, and hopefully throughout the state of Texas.
Yeah, people love to hear that. They love to hear that law enforcement is actually enforcing the law. That's certainly music to my ears, and I'm sure it is to a lot of our viewers and listeners as well. What's been your experience since Tom Homan has taken over as Board Czar? How do you find him to work with?
Well, I've met with Homan a couple times. We've got some shared interest in what's going on. And so it's now at this point, it's funny. A lot of federal law enforcement that was not willing to come out and help us in the past has all of a sudden showed up at our doorstep, all looking to help us and to partner with us. And that is a refreshing change. And I'm fully aware that many of the people in the federal system that were wanting to partner with us were being suppressed. I have to say, the Department of Homeland Security Investigations Unit in Victoria didn't really care what the Biden administration wanted. They continued to fight right alongside of us and help us work these investigations. Can't say that in a lot of places. Border Patrol never stopped. They always persisted in trying to find a way around the new rules and regulations that the Biden administration was giving them in order to prevent them from doing their job. Those guys adapted very quickly and have been a steadfast partner of ours throughout the last 4 years as we fought our way through this invasion that was coming up. So, but with home in there, now everybody is coming out. Everybody knows that they're going to have to earn their keep. The new chief of Border Patrol, Mike Banks, was the Texas border czar, and he has been an ardent supporter of the Operation Lone Star Task Force and the efforts we've had. And so he and I still talk on a regular basis. And I will tell you that those gentlemen wish to have results. They're of the same mindset of me, which is this: if we're taking your money and we're not providing you with the proper service or product for your money, then we're nothing short of thieves. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to be a thief and I don't want to be acquainted with thieves. And so now we have people in office who are going to demand results and are going to make sure that the people under their employment and command are going to do everything they can to make something happen. And we're seeing that at a very fast pace. I've met with ICE more times in the last 2 days than I have seen them in 4 years, if that tells you anything.
It does. I've been working with Tom Homan since he was first called by President-elect Trump, and I know how dedicated he is and how hard he works. I was just with him in Chicago with a big multi-agency operation up there with ATF and DEA and FBI, ICE, all the different agencies up there. And I tell you, the pride and passion of all of those agents up there, they just seem really glad to not be social workers anymore and get to do the work they signed up to do. I actually heard some of them say, look, I was on the border changing diapers and driving people places. That's not what I signed up to do, and I was just waiting for things to change to get back to doing what I actually signed up to do. And it seemed like there's a very different morale now than there was before.
It's amazing what a couple of weeks difference can make. And Tom Homan and his team have done a wonderful job. So, I mean, my hat's off to them. My hat's off to President Trump. They've drastically changed the dynamic. And you're absolutely right. They've taken these people in law enforcement who have basically been suppressed for the last 4 years and told that if they did their job, they would lose their job. And now they have unleashed them to actually enforce the laws of the federal government. And it's working. They're out, they're doing their job, and they're partnering with local and state law enforcement. And we're all coming together, work as a team, which is the way it should have been all along. And I haven't seen it in a long time. So I'm very grateful for what they've done and the dynamic that they've brought to it, the leadership they've brought in, and the new direction that the federal government is taking.
Is this going to make a substantial difference across a prolonged period of time? You say they're creative. They'll create a diversion, a distraction by, like you say, firing on guards or sending a bunch of people to one area where everybody has to go to deal with that, and then they do end runs around that. I know they're creative. I know it's a business and they're going to work at it, but will this be substantially better over the next few years?
If we follow through and do everything that needs to be done, because one of our weaknesses is we continue to talk about the border. And yes, the border is important, but the border is actually the easy part of this process. It is the interior of the United States that is going to be extremely difficult. Because remember that the illegal aliens that have been brought in, the vast majority of these tens of millions of illegal aliens, are beholden to the cartels while they're in the United States. They're indentured servants within our country, and they are going to have to fulfill any logistical needs that the cartel has in the US. So that's why the deportation is so important, because people don't realize that. This is not what it once was when it comes to, quote, immigration. It is no longer immigration. It is slave trade. And these people are being brought here. They're being put in indentured servitude. And that means that they are logistical means by which the cartel can can conduct its operations. So we have to have the deportation, but we also have to look at taking down all of the other elements within the United States that work with the cartel. We have to get rid of the cartel. We have to get rid of their contractors. We have to get rid of their subcontractors. And we have to go after those affiliates within the United States, whether that be otherwise legitimate businesses laundering the money or helping them move product or people through the United States, or working with them to help mask their operations in the U.S. We're going to have to dismantle this massive organized crime, across the U.S. in order to truly make a difference for the long term and to safeguard our communities across the U.S.
Does this include the gangs that they affiliate with when they get here? Are they setting up gangs once they get here? And I know when you talk about indentured servitude, they have family, some of them back in Mexico or El Salvador or wherever these cartels know who they are, where they are, and that's their leverage, right? If you get up there and you don't work off the money that you owe the cartel for getting you here, then we're going to hurt your family. We're going to kill your family members. We're going to do things that we use it as leverage for you. So these people can't get up here and just disappear. They might be working in prostitution. They might be working in slave labor, dealing drugs, transporting drugs, whatever. What happens if they're here and they get picked up and deported so they can't work off their debt to the cartel? What happens to those people then?
So the ones who are deported, the cartel throughout South Texas seems to have pretty much a universal policy. If you get 3 chances to make it in for the amount of money you paid while you were in Mexico, there's 3 chances for that money to come in. So if you come in from Mexico and you make it to Goliad, I catch you, I turn you over to Border Patrol, you get deported, you report back, you have 2 more opportunities to come across without paying extra money. What the hidden fee is once you do successfully come in the country and you get to Houston, you automatically owe an additional, say, $10,000. And you're absolutely right, Dr. Phil. I've had people tell me when I've asked them, why are you here and why are you doing this? And I've had people tell me, if I don't do what they've told me to do, they've told me that they will make my sister, my little sister, leave the house and they will put her into forced prostitution. And I've had people tell me that. And so now the cartel, if I as law enforcement catch them and arrest them, that's an acceptable loss in their business model. But if he abandons his position, that's not an acceptable loss. Because if I catch him and put him in jail, that's no harm, no foul. He does not have to pay that back. He is now, while he's in jail, de-obligated to the cartel until he gets out. But if he absconds on his own and decides not to fulfill, then you're absolutely right. They may take his sister and put her into prostitution. They may take his little brother and they may make him, basically a pack mule in the jungle to haul dope out, or they may send his brother to the United States against his will. So the cartel has a vast network. They keep track of these people because to them, people are not human beings made in the image of God like you and I think about them. People are merely a means to generate revenue. They are a product in and of themselves, and they are a much more valuable product than any drug will ever be, because I can only sell you cocaine one time, then that cocaine is going to be gone. But I can sell a human being over and over. And if it's somebody that I send into prostitution, I may sell that same person 10, 12 times a day, more in some instances. So I have a recurring revenue off of that person. So that person is an investment. And that's how they look at them, not as human beings, because much like a Marxist Leninist, they do not look at people as being made in the image of God, just as something they can use for their own benefit.
It's interesting. It seems to be universal because I talked to Sheriff Lamb in Arizona, Sheriff Daniels in Arizona. They face the same thing out there. They tell me these people, they feel for them. They say, look, they're here and they have to work this off. It's like, yes, I'm stealing this stuff from these homes. Yes, I'm trafficking these drugs. I don't want to, but I don't have any choice. If I don't, my mother's going to be on the corner. My brother's going to be a drug mule. I got to work this off in some way. And what they don't seem to realize is they'll never work it off. They don't ever get there. It just compounds so fast that it's a life sentence. You owe your soul to the company store. It's like I'll never, ever get it worked off. That's what I think people are not getting a grasp of. You said it so well. The millions of people that are already here are a complete criminal syndicate within the United States that needs to be taken down, or the cartels will continue to do their business. It's not just the border, it's the whole syndicate that exists within the country. And I really worry about China. There's like 36,000 Chinese, most of them young military-age men, that have crossed the border into the country, mostly down south of San Diego, but they're all around the United States. What are they doing? We don't know where they are. We don't know what they're doing. But you don't just wake up in China and decide, hey, I think I'll go to America. They had to have permission. They had to have sponsors. They had to have a way to get here. Why? What's their agenda? It really worries me.
I read an article a long time ago about how this functioned in China. And it's pretty interesting because basically you're absolutely right, Dr. Phil. So if I'm in China and I'm going to come here, and let's say I'm even going to come here legally and I'm going to get a visa and I'm going to go to the local university and go to college here somewhere in Texas. Before I get my visa and I come here, I have to meet with a military intelligence advisor at my house with my family. And I apply for the visa through them. And then they give me the conditions upon which I'm able to obtain my visa. And traditionally, every month, I will have to send back a report. They will tell me what they want. Say I'm going to Austin, Texas. They may tell me, okay, we need to know where the fire stations are. And I have to go out and map all the fire stations while I'm here. And I send that back. Next month, okay, at this fire station, what apparatus do they have? What equipment do they have? Okay, what is their shift? How many people are on a shift? I have to send them back pieces of information every single month. And if I fail to comply and I fail to do that, then my family eventually winds up in basically a slave labor camp. So they run it just like the cartel. And so the people that are here from China have to report that information back. And we've known this for a long time. We were talking about this 20 years ago, that the Chinese, before you had the, Google Earth and the little car driving around filming everything, they already had everything mapped out. They had our infrastructure. They knew where our transformers were, where our transmission lines were, where our water towers and our treatment plants and our sewage. So the Chinese have been at this game for a very long time. I remember a time probably 15, 20 years ago when the Chinese, we knew they had 10,000 people they had taken to Mexico and were having the cartels smuggle in. And they were just basically stacked up there in Mexico, coming in as the cartel could get them smuggled across the border. And so this is nothing new. But the other part of this, like you talked about, with regards to those people being placed in slavery right here in the United States, we have people on the left that will say, well, it's compassionate to let these people in. It's compassionate because they live in a grass hut somewhere in a really hard country, and they should come here and live a good life. Where is the compassion in slavery? If you bring somebody here and you put them into slavery, where's the compassion with that? Is that really what the United States stands for? Is it okay to allow somebody to bring them here and enslave them? There's far more compassion in preventing the illegal crossing at the river or at any border than there is to allow criminal organizations to enslave tens of millions of people within your country. And that's exactly what's happening right now.
And that doesn't even take into account the abuse, torture, rape, molestation, and all that they go through in the hands of the cartel while they have them before they cross over. We've talked to so many that clearly have been through all kinds of mistreatment at the hands of the cartel before they actually get here, not to mention sometimes, particularly in Arizona, the terrible conditions they have to live in and survive to get inland, to get where they're going. So This is a complex issue. I just am so thankful for you giving us insight into this. And you've clearly studied it, you've lived it, you're working it with fellow law enforcement members and not just sitting there with your feet up, as you say, on the desk down there. I think it's safe to say that the people in the county paying your salary are damn sure getting their money's worth. So God bless you for everything you're doing down there. Keep it up.
I'm nobody. I'm just a servant in a community, because all of us who collect check from the backs of the taxpayers, that's exactly what we are, and that's what we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be servants. We're here to do what's supposed to be done. And like I said, if we take their money and we don't provide them with the service that they're paying for, then we're no better than thieves. And I sure as hell never want to be a thief, Dr. Phil.
And you certainly are not. And you're also an excellent teacher, providing information that everybody needs to know. I hope this will be the first of many times that we talk about these things, because it's an ever-changing situation. And I hope we'll have an opportunity to talk again, because there's so much more I want to talk about, but we're out of time, and I could spend at least this much time continuing on, but I hope you'll take some time and talk to me again.
Yes, sir. I appreciate your time. I know you're very busy, man. Thank you and your staff and all the people that watch your show. And God bless you, and keep up the great work, Dr. Phil.
Well, I will. And when I get down that way, I'm gonna stop in and say hello to you and all the people you work with down there. And I hope to have you up here very soon. I appreciate your time, and we'll talk very soon, Sheriff. Thank you so much. This has been absolutely compelling. Thank you.
Thank you, and God bless.
Same to you.
Marketing is hard. But I'll tell you a little secret. It doesn't have to be. Let me point something out. You're listening to a podcast right now, and it's great. You love the host. You seek it out and download it. You listen to it while driving, working out, cooking, even going to the bathroom. Podcasts are a pretty close companion. And this is a podcast ad. Did I get your attention? You can reach great listeners like yourself with podcast advertising from Libsyn Ads. Choose from hundreds of top podcasts offering host endorsements, or run a pre-produced ad like this one across thousands of shows to reach your target audience in their favorite podcasts with Libsyn Ads. Go to libsynads.com, that's LIBSYN, ads.com today.
Hi, I'm Chris Gethard, and I'm very excited to tell you about Beautiful Anonymous, a podcast where I talk to random people on the phone. I tweet out a phone number, thousands of people try to call. You talk to one of them, they stay anonymous, I can't hang up, that's all the rules. I never know what's going to happen. We get serious ones. I've talked with meth dealers on their way to prison. I've talked to people who survived mass shootings. Crazy funny ones. I talked to a guy with a goose laugh, somebody who dresses up as a pirate on the weekends. I never know what's going to happen. It's a great show. Subscribe today, Beautiful Anonymous.